Hello everyone, this is the New Low News Show. To my left is King Kobe.
Good evening.
And to my right is Atom Bomb.
What's up, guys?
And as you know, I am MC Graham. And today...
Well, they wouldn't necessarily know that.
Well, they will know.
You're gonna learn.
As they will learn, I am MC Graham. And tonight we're going to talk about terrorism, I think, pretty much exclusively, because that's all the major news that we've been following at the moment.
Are we going to talk about Islam, the religion of peace?
That will be involved, although maybe you might not want to characterize it as such, but Islam is involved, terrorism is involved, knife crime is involved,
Is cannibalism involved? Can it be?
That would make this crazy story possibly even more over the top, but unfortunately, or fortunately, as the case may be, there is no cannibalism that I know of in any of these stories.
Thank Allah.
Yeah.
Wreak havoc, beat beatings, mad traffic, sleek and lavish, people speaking, leaking to the maverick. He see it as just another felony drug arrest. Any day could be the one he picked the wrong thug to test. Slug through the vest, shot in the street for pulling heat on a father who babies gotta eat. And when they get hungry, it ain't shit funny. Paid to interfere with how brother get his money now. Who's the real thugs, killers, and
So pretty much what a lot of people are talking about is a sort of a brutal event in England where these two dudes they hit a guy with a car,
Yes,
and then popped out and started hacking at him with a variety of bladed objects.
Yeah, I believe 2 chef's knives and machete are involved, or a cleaver or something.
One axe. I think
an axe.
Yeah, there was a small axe for cutting through the bone. You know, cutting the bone, I should say, or chopping the bone.
And they had a gun, but they actually used it to like defend against like bystanders or whatever, or just keep them
Kind of
at bay.
threaten them.
Yeah, very strange.
And what's interesting about this is that one, it happened at like 2 p.m., so just right flat in the middle of the day, and 2, it went on for a while because British people are both extremely disarmed and also apparently extremely timid, you know? So they just, even the cops, you know, the bobbies, they just showed up. They didn't have any weapons, so all they could do was, like, watch these 2 guys, like, just...
They have to radio in for armed police.
Yeah, so that
which took 20 minutes. And during that time, no one fled the scene.
No, he actually hung out.
Yeah.
He started talking to bystanders, asked to be filmed so he could, state his intentions or whatever. And I was just Adam was saying earlier. Imagine this happens in Fort Worth, Texas. Could it happen? With when everybody is armed, cops are rolling around armed with like a whole belt full of weapons.
Yeah, with a variety of less than
crowd
lethal
control devices, less lethal weaponry.
You have fucking SWAT teams, helicopters all over the place.
Oh, well, I was actually suggesting that the cops wouldn't have anything to do when they got there in half the amount of time that it took British armed police to get to that scene.
Yeah, within 10 minutes, chances
within
are...
10 minutes, that man is actually, torn apart by a lot of civilian bullets, in my opinion, if it were to happen in Texas.
Yeah, well, and it's funny you mentioned that because I follow certain Baltimore crime reporters on Twitter.
Yeah.
And just the other night, this dude who's walking his dog near Patterson Park was stabbed a few times, and they took all his stuff. But they ran away and they actually stole his car. They didn't loiter around, you know what I mean? Like, because chances are they would have gotten shot up or arrested or something like that. Yeah, so it was like, and this was also in the middle of the night,
Yeah, that's what's
not a lot of witnesses.
Yeah.
But that's what's so surreal about this. Like, I can't imagine in America hanging around and mutilating a body in broad daylight.
Yeah.
Because you just know just something horrible would happen to you eventually. But, like I said, or like we said, 20 minutes you can loiter around.
Right.
Yeah,
I will say this, like, just based on, like, crime rates and stuff like that, and also just, like, how long those 2 terrorists were able to just kind of, lounge around. Like,
Log on my mind.
Like, I would, if I'm gonna commit any crimes, I'm not gonna do it here. I'm gonna fucking hop on I'm gonna, go out to Heathrow Airport and,
say there's no trains out there.
Yeah, I'm gonna paddle across the ocean. I'm gonna commit crimes. I mean, it sounds fucking easy, like.
Yeah.
You just you commit a crime. You can even stop for tea or biscuits or whatever. Like, pull out your smartphone, snap a picture of Buckingham Palace or some shit. Hop on one of those. Yeah, get a selfie in front of one of those guards. Hop on one of the double-decker buses as your escape vehicle. And it's interesting how far people can fall, because the British used to be, when you said the British are coming, that at one point was like a really that was like a serious threat. Oh shit, the British, these guys are stone killers. They've been
modern Britain is a very confusing place.
Right.
Margaret Thatcher happened.
Right.
Much like Reagan, I don't really know what to make of that. It definitely happened,
right.
And some big changes.
And people look back on it affectionately for some bizarre reason.
And when she died just this year, there were riots in the streets too, so a very polarizing figure.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that happened, and then what? The 90s and the 2000s, and
they had Tony Blair, who got
yeah,
who pretty much and he was a Labour leader, so he was one of their left-wing parties, or
right.
their farthest left party that gets any votes, and he was going right along with George Bush with his whole crusade into Iraq. So yeah, pretty perplexing place.
Well, I wanted to get into immigration policy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because as Anders Breivik might tell you, Europe in general has they've changed their immigration policies significantly. Mm-hmm. They used to have sort of ethnic requirements.
We did too, up until 1960 something.
And so they maybe more recently relaxed these requirements.
Right.
And I don't know, there's just a lot of tension, like in Britain. Shortly after this event occurred, a group called the English Defence League, which some people call fascists, some other people just call a bunch of football hooligans or whatever.
I believe I called them poorly dressed fascists on Twitter today.
Well,
but
I did see a picture of a bunch of them wearing their ski mask with EDL right on the forehead.
Yeah.
And in that picture, it was right in the middle of the crowd. There was a guy drinking a pint. That was unmistakable. So.
Well, that's gonna be any crowd shot anywhere in the British Isles. So.
Yeah, but I just thought it was kind of funny.
But and actually EDL is sorry to get kind of tangential here. EDL is criticized by some for being essentially pro-Israel. So using Islamophobia to advance whatever Middle Eastern policies us and the British have going on. And that to me is probably the most delicate line to walk whenever you're talking about Islam or anti-Islam. It's it is fine to think that Islam as written is a terrible, terrible thing, but too often people then make the leap from that to, we need to defend Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, from the Muslim horde. It's I did not sign up for that either. Okay, so. There's enough room in my big pitch black heart to be both anti-Islam and not give two shits about any of those Levantine semi-representative states.
Well, I was just thinking there are fascist groups in America, white supremacist groups.
Yeah.
They don't have nearly as much appeal as they maybe would have once had, and
right.
This is just a difference between America and Europe.
Right.
Which is that we have diversity, but there doesn't seem to be. It's two different concepts, right? We have the melting pot concept.
Right.
It might not always be foolproof, but the idea is a couple generations you'll be speaking English and working at the McDonald's and cutting the grass.
Yeah, there is enough room in from sea to shining sea for any one of you.
We took it.
For any one of you to come in here and work for $7.25 or less with no benefits. You can do that no matter who you are.
Well,
vacation. You don't get that.
Go on, they will eventually have benefits.
Right. Is that what they're telling people these days?
Well, yeah, they're just saying that.
But yeah, so.
Well, to get back to it.
Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay.
To tie all this together, I think the difference between America and Europe, and this is something I also said today on Twitter. I was very busy this afternoon, which is that our greatest accomplishment was the Atlantic Ocean, which is that we can do whatever we want. We can screw over every other nation on the planet, and when we're done, we just paddle back home. And they can try to get here,
right?
If we let them. But that's the thing. In Europe, you are so close to the people that you hate.
Yeah.
That for example, the French. They had a colony in Algeria, right? And there was this whole war of independence where 1 million or 2 Algerians were killed, and quite a few French people were killed as well. And it was brutal. There's torture, repression, all that stuff. And where is Algeria in relation to France? It's right across the street. So now the Algerians are moving to France, and they obviously hate the French, or many of them do, for, crimes committed against them. And the French never liked them that much to begin with either. So it's like, you're in the same neighborhood as your worst enemy. And we don't know what that's like, in America.
Well, and meanwhile, I can't speak for France, but a lot of Europe, they've relaxed their immigration policies. And so what you have, effectively, is a multiculturalism,
right,
which is the idea that different cultures, different backgrounds, different interests can coexist in the same country, under the same monetary system and all that, and just nothing will happen, like somebody getting run down and then mutilated or whatever. And this is an idea I just don't think is tenable long term.
Right.
Maybe over hundreds of years, eventually, there will be Britons of all shapes and sizes and religions, and they'll all get along. This is not something easy, It's not something you can just throw people together.
Well, it's not something you can mandate,
Right.
Like from on high, the government can't just decree, we shall have brotherhood between all you motherfuckers. It's a very coarse sort of process. And additionally, like, how long have Europeans and Muslims been have been squabbling with each other? It's been like 1,200 years or something. But but we are connected, whether we like it or not, to Europe. Economically, they're our biggest trading partner.
Yeah.
And also, every time they do get into fascism and war, which seems to be on a
like
30, 30 or 40 year cycle, we have to go and sort it out.
Right.
And maybe that'll be in 2040. We'll be over there again.
Well, they say what history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes.
Yeah.
Right?
Or it just literally repeats.
I bet there was people talking before the rise of Nazism, like, yeah, you heard about this group? They're called the National Socialists. They seem like kind of fags to me.
Then it'll be like, oh yeah, the EDL. Yeah, I'll be on record calling them a bunch of chavs. Next thing you know, they'll be like like the prime minister will be one of them or something.
Oh, speaking of the Prime Minister, though, back to the whole alleged beheading of that soldier. Prime Minister called it a terrorist attack.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck is that? Come on now.
Okay, this is a very extremely loaded question. I think what tipped people off that it was a terrorist attack was the fact the guys were shouting Allahu Akbar as they were cutting the dude.
Okay.
So that makes
they're just saying God is great.
Right.
Could it be?
I mean, I say God is great when I'm eating my bagel.
Yeah.
But they were saying it in Arabic, which is not the standard language.
I mean, I get funny looks at Towson Hot Bagel when I say Allahu Akbar and I'm biting into a toast.
Are you
bagel?
Eating a terrorist bagel of some kind, or?
No, I was just eating a bagel. I was having breakfast, and I mean, come on now.
So yes, if you are dismembering somebody and you are yelling Allahu Akbar, does that make it terrorism?
So I was committing a terrorist attack on a bagel.
Exactly.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And I on Twitter today. Sorry, this is to keep returning to what I was typing into my phone this afternoon.
Gotcha.
I was also some journalist asked how we would define terrorism, and so here's my working definition, which is a terrorist activity has to involve some level of spectacle, right?
Yeah.
Which is that, like, okay, so what is the difference between the dudes who stabbed that guy in Patterson Park and took his watch and fled the scene versus the dudes who stabbed this guy in England? Is that they just stood around mugging for the cameras, talking about, and so and so the violent activity on its own right, or in its own right, had another layer to it, which is that they wanted people to see and they wanted to get their message across and stuff like that. So terrorism
me and Kobe were talking about it earlier, in the fact that terrorism usually has some type of ideologically motivation to behind it.
Yeah.
So, for example, political, some type of religious affiliation to the attack.
Yeah.
But to me, this was just, a flat out premeditated murder on a stranger.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was basically almost like a revenge killing, because the guy was saying it's like, no, this is for, he said he was tired of all the Muslims being killed in Afghanistan.
Right.
So he just wanted to target some person from the military, I guess.
Right.
My personal definition of a terrorist attack would just be an attack on a nation.
Right.
To me, this is just an attack on one dude.
Right.
And it just...
That's a good point.
And I was just kind of curious why the Prime Minister would want to label that as a terrorist attack. Like, what exactly is he insinuating involve,
Well, there's something that happened... I don't know if you guys heard. It's called the 9/11 attacks.
Oh, yeah.
And since then, they've really changed. They keep changing the terminology on us and the motives for fighting the war on terror and what the war on terror is and what terror is and what's just mass murder and so forth. I remember terrorism being defined as targeting innocent civilians.
I don't know, man. Like, we all do that. Like, who hasn't in their daily life targeted innocent civilians? Well, I mean, I haven't personally, but reading the news, it occurs across the ideological spectrum. Americans target civilians, Al Qaeda targets civilians. I think that's a bit too. That's
too broad.
Yeah. Well, or to me, that's more of like a. That's just talking about tactics. You know what I mean? If you target a soldier versus a civilian, is that suddenly not?
Like the Fort Hood shootings.
Yeah.
Soldier targeting soldiers.
And I would say that's probably
call that terrorism.
Yeah.
Dorner targeting other police officers.
Yeah, and but he also did kill 2 civilians.
But they called him a domestic terrorist, and I thought it was more like revenge or something, his motive. But in any case,
I'd call it a psychological break. But
they keep changing, and then there's also just like these loons out there.
Mm-hmm.
As far as we know right now, people like Jared Loughner or James Holmes. Just random, like, schizoid white guys.
Randos.
Yeah, they have a spree shooting or attack of some kind, and they try to flee, but they get caught or something. You can't really tell what's going on in their head, and so, they're motivated maybe by their personal psychology. But people were arguing that. I remember when the Batman theater shooting happened, people were saying, well, they're only saying this isn't terrorism because he's just a white guy, and I was like, well, no, there is a reason it's not terrorism. It's just a spree shooting.
I guess for me, it's there's that whole saying about, okay, what is the difference between a language and a dialect, right? A language is a dialect with an army and a navy. Okay, so that's so there's always going to be a political dimension to this. Terrorism is always going to really be the weapon of individuals that don't have conventional state resources at their prime disposal, right? So they don't have fighter jets, they don't have drones or any of that stuff, so they resort to other means, right? So there's always going to be that thing like, is the U.S. government capable of terrorism? Most people, I think to most people, that would be impossible to comprehend. Even though the U.S. government might be capable of war crimes, it's not terrorism because it's through an official state apparatus, whereas a terrorist needs to be kind of like living out in the woods or something.
A lone wolf.
Yeah, or in a small group of his friends, but nothing sort of too legitimate. And I would also say that
wolf pack.
Yeah.
This is not a joking matter, actually.
Yeah, and maybe and with white guys that just crack. I don't know. I read somewhere that oftentimes people that are members of violent terrorist organizations are not that crazy, because you can't have people that are too nuts because they jeopardize the operation. You can't have some dude who gives off the whole like vibe of this guy is a ticking time bomb, He needs to be a dude who can drive around in a Camry, watch football, stuff like that.
A person that can also be easily influenced, because another thing that I was talking to Kobe about, it's like with the 2 guys, like the Sarnev brothers, or is that their last name?
Sarnev, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So those guys, what Kobe was telling me, they had a pretty tough life for a little while, for a long time. And before Kobe said they were, quote unquote, radicalized. And to me, it's like the people that actually kind of took them under their wing, that guy or those people are fucking dangerous. Because those are the charismatic, and they'll brainwash you and think it's like this is your road to salvation. You will be fine if you just follow everything that I say.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's especially with Islamic terrorism, there are people that exist that are propagandists, and they never intend to use their own lives in a terrorist act.
Exactly.
Yeah, they just sort of drum up propaganda for other people.
And recruiters, guys that drive around to the slums or whatever, and say like, and start, talking, are good talkers, but are never gonna put themselves on the front line,
Right.
which organizationally makes sense. You want the guy who's very charismatic to be out recruiting 10 other terrorists or 20 other terrorists.
But yeah,
like that.
in a way, you're right, though. They are more pathologically, like, evil.
Right.
Or sociopathic. Well, speaking of Islamic terrorism, that was the other distinction I wanted to make about terrorism, is when the war on terror, or the war on terror, as Bush said, was declared, it wasn't a war on all terrorism. It was a war on Islamic terrorism.
Right.
And they used to actually say, we're fighting Islamofascism.
Right.
And that's just, it's disappeared from the dialogue because it's not politically correct.
Right.
But that is literally what the war, that is the national security interest of the war on terror.
But it's interesting because the way they would define Islamofascism included both Al-Qaeda and Saddam Hussein, who were not
Right.
who didn't like each other, and also included Iran, who didn't like any of the other, so it was like a grab bag of whoever geopolitically, they could want to go after. If we were just fighting Sunni militancy, for example, that might be a somewhat coherent
Oh, we should
objective.
get that done.
Right, but then we would be doing things like supporting the Assad regime in Syria,
Right.
because they're the ones who
Other
are cracking.
Islamofascists.
Yeah, because they're the ones who are cracking down on Sunni militancy. And we'd be supporting the Iranians because they're no fans of the Saudis, and we wouldn't be friends with the Saudis because they're the biggest funders of this kind of bullshit, right? So, and that always struck me as interesting. In theory, the global war on terror could kind of work if y'all weren't if the people who are running the show weren't such fucking dipshits about it,
Well, you could just theoretically declare total war on
Earth.
Actually, that's probably the best idea.
Right.
I'm just curious, like, the war on terror doesn't mean much anymore, drone strikes some people here or there, Obama makes a speech, he supports the underdogs and some kind of rebel groups.
Yeah. And then, but
there's that, but see, this is the thing, it's not preventing terrorism, right?
Well, yeah.
Even Islamic terrorism.
Well, that's because, all it takes is, even if every time, some big shot from Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula pops its head up above ground, a Predator drone goes by and shoots 30 people, even if that happens with 99% accuracy, you still have random dudes like the two dudes in England or the Jarnov brothers who are, they might come in contact with other radicals, but they kind of do a lot of the radicalization on their own,
Well, that's another related phenomenon, is a lot of these people, not all of them, some of them are radicalized through people they know or whatever, have internet search histories of radicalizing themselves through looking at propaganda online or reading. Al-Qaeda puts out a magazine in English. I could read it now. I'm not going to. Just put that on the record.
Oh, and but just one more thing. One thing that Adam said before we started recording was when they were, because after those two dudes stabbed that guy in England, they asked to be recorded, and the one guy, as he was being recorded, was apparently very calm.
Very calm.
Yeah.
It was he didn't necessarily even seem heated when he was actually trying to get his point across about, the government doesn't care about you. Get rid of it.
Right.
Get rid of them. And
it's not a bad point, but
it's but did he really have to posthumously execute this one guy? You know what I mean?
Nah.
Just
or would that convince listeners more?
It's like, get rid of your government. I mean, excuse me, I'm gonna chop off a head real quick after I just ran this motherfucker over.
Yeah. You can trust me, I'm covered in blood.
Yeah,
so.
you can trust me. I mean, he did have bloody hands. Like he was telling Grandma Kobe. Yeah, literally. And you know how you fumble with your keys while you're talking to somebody, looking at your cell phone?
Scratch your nuts or whatever.
Exactly. He was just literally switching the tools that he used between his hands and just, talking animatedly with one of his hands and holding the knives and shit in the other. So those were the murder weapons.
Right.
I just thought that was quite strange. And also, there's one woman who went up to him to ask him, did you do it? He said, yeah. For lack of a better word. And it's not obviously verbatim, but she also just insists on the fact that she was fearless, that she was not scared, and she said, better me than a child. It's like, yeah, I get that. I understand that. But also, why would this guy actually apologize as well, that the women and the children had to see this?
Right.
That's a sort of British politeness, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like...
he was born in the UK.
How dreadfully sorry, ma'am.
Exactly.
Didn't mean for you to watch a...
I did do it in broad daylight in front of everybody, but sorry you had to see it.
And also, it just seemed like he was so calm. He was waiting for the police in a way that he almost just wanted to target authority figures, people who use brute force. So he's attacking a military man. He's waiting for the police to arrive.
Right. Maybe sort of a martyrdom thing,
I guess, yeah. But the thing is, though, it's like, did he really assume that he was going to get a suicide by cop kind of thing? Because he failed.
Well, yeah, him and his accomplice, who has not been named yet, were both shot
one was
in serious condition.
One was in serious condition. Yeah. So they're probably both going to live.
Well,
and also another thing, like with the bystanders and everything, no one was like in that one mobile video that I watched earlier before I came over to the studio. No one was screaming.
Yeah.
There was a woman literally pushing a cart, I guess, of groceries or belongings or whatever, walking by, and it's just like some old woman. It's like, what does she think? She just sees a body, possibly with the head off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. All right, and then keep walking by.
Stiff upper lip, you know what I mean?
It's like so crazy. It's just like, how many people actually
keep calm and carry on,
Yeah.
Set the revolution, let the things bust, and thank us. When the smoke clear and you can see the sky again, there will be the chopped off heads of Leviathan. My friend, I call them strangers. Anybody talk to them end up in some danger. Can't reform them. They pray 4 times a day, they pray 5. Who ways is strange when it's time to survive?
I think one of the things that's going on, maybe with the dude who's like really calm, is I think what attracts people to these militant ideologies is clarity of vision, clarity of purpose, and you compare that to like what the average person goes through, which is just like pretty much meandering through life in a sort of haze of fear and doubt and self-recrimination. So if you have some sort of totalizing ideology that sort of at least tells you what you should be doing in no uncertain terms, even if it is a terrible thing, that can have a sort of a, overall that can make you more at peace with the world. You know what I mean?
Because if you just let that idea consume you, then it's just like, oh, my eyes are open now.
Right.
So.
And it's like,
I can see that.
Yeah, and so it's sort of like, and it's funny because after this happened, I read an article in The Guardian by some liberal, I don't remember her name, and she was saying like, we can't give in to fear. We need to overcome fear with unity and tolerance. I wanted to think like, do you actually believe a single fucking word that you're writing, or are you just writing them because that's what you've been told to write? So do you believe in your ideology? Maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. Did that dude believe in what he was doing? I know for a fact that he probably did. Like, otherwise,
you don't do that. Just maybe you'll get into heaven. Or
yeah. So it's like, and that's
there are no agnostic terrorists.
Yet maybe that's the next wave, the wave that no one sees coming.
I thought those would be like the environmental terrorists. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But
good point.
But no, the environmental terrorists,
they mostly just did property destruction.
And they also, I think, they believe in the defense of Mother Earth, as strongly as these other craters.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. To take it to that level, absolutely, you have to believe in something like that much. See, that's where I'm lucky. I don't believe in anything.
Right.
Not even my job, not school. Like sometimes not even breakfast. It's like, fuck it.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like.
So I will not be doing anything. I will not be doing any terrorizing anytime soon.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well, that's good.
But if you were
that's just for the FBI and CIA listening to us. You know what I mean? Their views don't pop up like on our YouTube channel, but I know they're listening.
Anthony Burgess, who was the dude who wrote Clockwork Orange, he wrote another book called 1985, where he actually he predicted that there was going to be a big showdown in Britain between Muslim immigrants and everyone else. And he was writing this in the 60s, 70s or whatever. And he also predicted the use of airplanes as weapons. I think we've talked about this book before, but in some interviews, he was saying that his concern was that British people were very wishy-washy about a lot of things, and these Muslim dudes weren't, and so that would be kind of like there wouldn't be anyone.
Big clash of culture.
Yeah, it's a clash of culture when one culture isn't even sure that it wants to be around, So who would you bet on in that fight?
You think of it this way: if you frame it in a larger context, Britain used to be the biggest empire in the world.
Yeah.
Now it's a tiny country, a reliable trading partner.
Right.
Produces several good musicians.
And some good TV shows.
Sure, but it's nothing. It's not a huge deal anymore. It's not the East India Tea Company or whatever the fuck their empire was. So
trading company.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you have that, and then you have Islam, which started by one pedophile and then spread across the world, and now there's 1 billion followers. And they literally, it's laid out in the Quran that they're out for to conquest the world. I mean, the Islam's plan for peace is when everybody's a Muslim, it's illegal to kill other Muslims, so nobody will kill each other.
Yeah.
So they're long term.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have a long-term vision, conviction. Not every Muslim is evil or participates in jihad. It's just in the book. So just disgruntled individuals will, or somebody will take it literally. I'm curious because the atheist response or the anti-theist response or the agnostic response, if there's still any of those guys around, to radical religious violence, or even in a case where somebody says they're motivated by their religion or they're literally doing jihad, or there's Christian guys that kill abortion doctors or whatever. This response is always weaker than I want it to be. I'm usually the only one on Facebook posting just pure vitriol against religion. Some would say bigotry against religious people. Right. And, my whole thing is you just got to fight fire with fire. You got to be, I'm not going to kill anybody, but you have to come with something strong.
Right.
Because it's not very fun to play the whole, just liberal, intolerant of intolerance. And
it's not fun to be the peacemaker, you know what I mean? This is horrific.
This is not all Muslims, Right. It's the religion of peace, except for all the parts.
Except for the entire history when it's a violent superstition, just like most human, not to single it out, just like many human belief systems. But so
I just wish there was a stronger, I wish everybody was Christopher Hitchens, basically.
Right.
But not everybody can be Christopher. I can't.
Right.
I do my best to be.
Although, to his credit, Richard Dawkins today came out on his Twitter and said, he said that people were wondering if this was an act of terrorism, where terrorism is usually defined as motivated by religious belief. So he was, still putting that out there. Of course, other people responded by saying that, Dawkins was being just as intolerant as the crazy Muslims. And you really can't, what do you even say to someone who thinks that?
Some will go of their own free will to die. Others take them with you when they blow sky high. What's the difference? All you get is lost children while the bosses sit up behind the desk and cost billions to blast humans in half.
Well, that's kind of I went to a counter protest when the Westboro Baptist Church showed up.
Those guys are great.
Yeah.
I do mean great.
in Towson, in Baltimore City, 5 or 6 years ago or whatever, me and a friend of ours went down to because they were showing up protesting something, so we went to a counter protest, right, with a big sign that said "God is mad dead" with a skull and 2 crossbones on it, right. So this is literally 2 erect penises crossed over like the bones would on a traditional pirate flag.
Was this one of the the God hates fags things, or?
Yeah, that's who the Westboro Baptist Church. That's their whole claim to fame. Yeah. Anyway, so. So some of the people when they talked to us, they were like, that's not what the Bible really says. And I'm like, you're fucking lying. It absolutely, if you think that the spiteful, hateful, just narrow-minded bigotry is out of place in the good book, you weren't reading it that closely or that honestly. It's just there. You can choose to ignore it, but you have to realize that's what you're doing. You're already distancing yourself from it. Oh, that's a very nasty thing to think. I'm going to look away from it. But to say it's not in the text is disingenuous. And
I imagine you guys were the only maybe anti-theist protesters.
Yes.
Even though there were...
Our point...
You literally don't believe in God.
Right.
So
I want to smash the belief system and have it scatter across the world.
I want to kill God.
I would do so if I had the opportunity. Now, and it was like, but yeah, and then someone actually, like a news crew wandered up and they started just pulling, people from the crowd and asking them, like, no, why are you here, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I'm here to combat a very pernicious superstition, all religion or something like that. And I hadn't eaten all day either, and I had a bandana kind of like over my face and stuff like that, so, just wandering out of the crowd like some zombie, just going on some rant.
Some Nietzschean.
Bloodshot eyes because you're dehydrated.
Yeah, probably smoking a cigarette or something. Like, that's the thing. We got to get rid of the whole fucking thing, man. They keep you locked down like
Only
that.
one side is allowed to have bombs. It's like making a soldier drop his weapon, shooting him and telling him to get to stepping. Obviously, they came to portion up his fortune. Sounds to me like that old robbery extortion. Same game. Can't reform them.
When I was thinking about the events in England today, one of the things that occurred to me is people, they'll say things like, I don't like intolerance, I hate intolerance, we need to transcend hate, and all that sort of stuff, and kind of indicating that radical Islam is false because it's violent. And I think that is a very naive, and in the case of the West, very fucking hypocritical way to look at the world. What was it, for example, that stopped the Nazis? Was it the fact that we're just such pleasant people to be around, or was it bullets and tanks and bombs and ferociousness? You know what I mean? So it's possible in the future that whoever is going to control the future, and I don't know which group of people it's going to be, are not necessarily going to be the nicest people to be around. And that seems to be the pattern throughout all of history. And so what makes, for example, atheism correct and Islam false is not that we're just such nice, peaceful, happy-go-lucky individuals, although that might be true. It's just that there is no Allah. The Quran was not written in heaven. There was no revelation to the warlord, bandit, pedophile named Muhammad that had any special significance. He was a very successful individual in terms of uniting disparate tribes and taking over vast swaths of territory. But there's nothing magical or metaphysically, just none of what is described by this religion actually happened. And that's what makes atheism true. It's just that there's no God. We are alone in a cold, pitiless, decaying universe. And everyone needs to know that. So, to bring this point home, we are going to have Atom Bomb recite some lines from the popular show Game of Thrones by the character Sandor Clegane, also known as the Hound. And this is just to kind of give the basic scope of history in about a paragraph.
Look at me. Stannis is a killer. The Lannisters are killers. Your father was a killer. Your brother is a killer. Your sons will be killers someday. The world was built by killers, so you'd better get used to looking at them.